Hey, what's up, guys? I'm doing another episode of SKD Sits in His Room and Talks About BlazBlue, right? So today's topic is defensive approach, and I did a stream on this, and I kind of figured it'd be better condensed into a video, just so that I could, make it a little more concise if possible. And, I have a offensive approach topic coming too, and it'll kind of, work in tandem with this video. There's a lot of things that you kind of have to know prior, stuff like, obviously, I assume you know number notation. I'm going to talk about stuff like fuzzy jump, and if you don't know what fuzzy jump is, you could just ask me in the comments, or I'll just post a link in the description that will, try to explain that. But yeah, if you got any questions, just let me know. I want to go through my outline real quick so people know what I'm going to be talking about. So, you mind if I read off the paper? Maybe I won't, but So, highlighting defensive approach and differences in effective mentality for BlazBlue, right? So, the kind of difference is between avoidance and wait and see kind of mentality, and I'll explain that a little later. And then I kind of condense it into the ideology that you want in BlazBlue is to kind of weaken or force your opponent to overextend on their offense or give up their pressure. So I kind of explain why BlazBlue is a kind of like wait and see mentality pretty lightly, and I just talk about like what low level defense is, what high level defense is, and everything in between. And then I'll go into high level contextual applications, so talking about like how you'd use stuff specifically once we get to that higher level. So I mean, this is kind of like a good way to start thinking about defense in general, and it's pretty important for kind of developing your defensive strategy. So yeah, anyway, now I'll get started. I don't know how long I've been going on about that, but yeah, I'm officially, like, this is where the talk begins, right? So I will kind of try to talk about like avoidance versus wait and see mentality, right? And you've all seen like games like Marvel vs. Capcom 3, right? Where, the mix-ups are like crazy, and you're just like, oh my god, like I can't get out of this defensive situation, and I'm just gonna explode, right? So the best space to be is not in the mix-up, right? But BlazBlue is not really that game, right? And we can kind of say that because like the mix-up options that a lot of characters have are a lot more tame, They're what we generally will call reactable mix-up, right? So, there's an art of structuring offense to hit people with reactable mix-up, but we'll talk about that in the other video. So, I'll just pick some very standard characters here. The two Shoto loud yelling boys, right? So, one thing is that, the general mix-up speed, right, is going to kind of dictate your approach to defense, right? Because I can react to this, I can react to this, I can react to throws, right? And so can your opponent, right? So suddenly we're at this point where, maybe sitting there and blocking isn't too bad, especially considering that they are locked into a linear offensive situation afterwards. And it's pretty true with most of the overheads in this game. Not only are they relatively slow, but is this right? Yeah. Once they block it, right? Look, I don't really have that many cancel options, right? I'm pressing all the buttons. I can special cancel. I have my D moves, right? But these are pretty linear, right? At this point, I can only do 5D, and at this point, I can only do 2D, and at this point, I can only do 6D. And I'm like, okay, cool. So 6D is the safe option here, but it's also very predictable, and there are ways to counter that. So by locking them into this option set after you guard a move correctly, you can start to work with that. You can barrier out because you know that they're going to try to like keep their turn instead of letting you punish them. Or if they do something like this, they only have special cancel options available, right? And if you're ready for all the special cancel options, then suddenly it's not so bad, right? So obviously if you block this overhead, yeah, he can't really do too much. You can just crouch under the second hit and punish him, right? But the idea is the important part here. So we're just sitting there, and then, we successfully block an overhead. We're like, cool, we successfully break a throw, and we're back to neutral, like, quick. And you know, you understand from there, and there's no real threat of being frame trapped after a throw break and stuff like that, it's a pretty fair scenario for you, right? And the only way that you can earn these during pressure is by blocking these, right? So it's a good thing, right? It's a good thing. If you block someone's mix-up, suddenly it's a good thing because everything becomes very, very linear, and you can really exploit that, right? How do we exploit that? I'll go into that a little later, but that's kind of where the wait and see mentality comes from, and it's true for most of the mix-up in the game, right? A lot of the stronger mix-ups that are way harder to defend against require some sort of like resource some of the time, or converting it requires resource. So those are kind of like the rule breakers, but they like cost something, right? So I kind of want to stick with like standardized characters here, because this is kind of like almost a game-wide rule and trend in things, right? So the idea, right, if we can take that specific concept and just extrapolate it, I wrote it here in a very funny way. So weakening and forcing your opponent to give up their turn through passive or implicit threat, right? So how do you do that? But I mean, we'll get to that, but that's the goal, right? That's the goal. So the kind of expectation of defensive ability will change from low level to mid level to high level, right? So, you know, I'll just say low level is a very like basic visual understanding of what's going on. You know, I'm afraid to get hit by overhead, right? I'm afraid to get hit by overhead, so I'm gonna try to get out of this situation, or I'm gonna like, you know, I like very, very strictly, I don't want to take the mix-up, right? I don't want to take the mix-up. Oh, it's scary, right? But it's really not too bad, right? So we'll talk about mid-level interpretation as kind of strategizing around that once you start defending against it, right? Because low level might be like, oh, I either don't want to deal with the mix-up, or I block the mix-up and then nothing happens, right? Nothing happens. I'm just sitting there blocking all day, right? You want it to be worth something, and making the most of that opportunity is really important. So actually, I will switch these guys. Boom. Who am I switching to? Ragnar. Right? So, let's say we've got that, right? And I'm just going to run a bunch of recordings just to show you that. Ba, 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 da, ba. So this is his safest option, right? Dead spike, right? Oh, whoops. What else do we got? What are his other special cancel options? DP's obviously unsafe, so let's go with Gauntlet Hades, right? So let's let's see what happens here. Right? I guess I don't want to overdrive. So, you know, we blocked it out, get a punish, right? It's on a random, but so everything has an answer, right? All of his special cancel options are punishable. So what is this one? Oh, this is the Dead Spike one. This should be the Hellsfang one, right? Right? You get a punish if you buffer that instant block in there, right? And ultimately, it's not risky for him. Well, it's not risky for you to be able to cover all these options, because look, my response to Hellsfang was to instant block, right? So I'm going to still instant block here. Right? I input the instant block to deal with the Hellsfang and get the punish on the Hellsfang. I could still block the Gauntlet Hades and punish the Gauntlet Hades, right? So how about the Dead Spike, right? Like, it's not too bad, right? It still leaves my options open. I haven't committed to anything, and just by being good at blocking, suddenly I changed the dynamic from him performing offense to a very risky one, right? When he can only special cancel, it makes it very easy for me to actually deal with all these options accordingly, right? And ultimately, dealing with all of them accordingly isn't so bad, right? So we just want to enforce that, really enforce that, right? So we've got like the safer option in this, right? That's a safer option, right? So how do we deal with that, right? Can we mash it? No, we get counter hit and it's just bad times, right? We can IB, it doesn't really do anything, he's still very plus, but if you instant barrier or even just barrier, I think he doesn't have enough time to, like, you know, jail you, right? So we'll do this, right? Try to do that. Maybe I'll try to do the whiff one, because it's more likely to whiff on. Right, so this is kind of like his go-to pressure string after that. So let's see what happens. Whoops. We're very far. We're very far. I be there. I try to like really take advantage of it, but you could whiff punish it. Yeah. Just like that, you know. Don't drop your combos, but just like that, right? So even mid-screen, I guess it's a little tougher to display in the corner. But suddenly you're working your space. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. There we go. Right? So here's my pressure string. You know, if I IB barrier that 5B in the air, I'm so far, right? I'm starting to get really far from him. I'm starting to work that space, right? And as soon as I gain a little bit of space, I can start kind of, you know, making it a little risky for him to keep pursuing the pressure. So, you know, I could jump just like that, where I jumped here. Right? It's safe for me to attempt to jump. If he tries to overextend to chase me, right, I could come down on him with a normal or whatever. So he's got to be very cautious about this space versus if I am still within that space, right? Look. What can I do here? I can't even jump out of a 2A successfully. Right? So that's pretty good for him because imagine if I want to wager that space. You know, he's still free to do whatever, right? Suddenly, it becomes a lot more challenging if he has to guess on that space because his overall coverage of options is way better just because of the distance, right? So establishing that distance is a really nice way to kind of just be like, okay, cool. I'm gonna earn some options back, and you know, if they do overextend, there are ways to exploit that. But the particulars of how to exploit that are part of the high-level applications. So that's kind of like a very basic idea that you want to go with, right? And keep going with it, and keep going with it, and keep going with it. So if we can make that dynamic really risky for him, suddenly he doesn't want to do the overhead so liberally, right? Because imagine if he does the overhead, right? And you know this is coming, right? You can kill him. You can kill him. You can kill him. Right? So it makes it very predictable, and then suddenly I can't do combos while I'm talking, but you get the idea, right? So it becomes very scary for him to even try that, right? So like, what does he do? What does he do? Maybe he just shouldn't go for it, right? Maybe if Gauntlet Hades gets blocked like almost every time, it's not really worth it unless I have 50 meter to make it safe. But even then, you know, what if I can't RC it, right? What if I don't have the opportunity to RC it? Suddenly, going for my mix-up is not a good idea, right? And that's what you want to drive to them, right? You want to drive it to them. You gotta be ready to defend against these things, even if they do make those choices and make those guesses. But, you know, just stick it to them, right? Just be like, yeah, don't you dare try to hit me with this overhead. I'll just overdrive it and kill you, right? Maybe you are not at the point where you can just easily overdrive against the overhead and kill them, but you want it to be less worth their time to go for, right? Because if they're going to go for it and you block it, they kind of just made their pressure a lot weaker instead of just staying in your face and going for something a little like harder to react to, like throw, right? But that requires them to close a lot of distance. So learn how to control that space. Learn how to kind of create that space for you in a very safe way. Barrier, instant blocking, you know, just make things very unsafe for them, right? Passively. You don't have to actually like hit them, right? To make it scary for them to be negative. They have to not want to die and know that they will die if they do something wrong. So kind of like drilling that into your opponent's skull is not really like bad conditioning, because ultimately you're applying risk reward very well, right? It's not about conditioning them, because you have to be ready to deal with all these things. I hope that's like kind of easy to understand. I could definitely go into more detail if people like ask me questions in the comments or whatever, but you know, like it's kind of, you know, in a nutshell, I'll repeat my statement from earlier: weakening and forcing your opponent to give up their turn via passive or implicit threat, right? So hope that makes sense, right? Just by that little concept, that little snippet, right? You can see a lot of cases in the game where that happens just by defending properly. So you got to make it very hard for them to go for the mix-up or continue pressure, stuff like that, you know, just dealing with offense. So I will kind of say we've graduated, right? We've gone from super low-level application to like a decent strategy to now I want to talk about high-level applications, right? So the three big things that I put here are strategic use of IB, right? Strategic use of barrier, and, you know, basic fuzzy applications, right? So if you don't know what fuzzy guard is, I could kind of lightly explain it as inputting things during block stun to cover multiple outcomes. So for example, we've got Ragnar doing 2A5, 2A 2B, right? And then we've got him doing 2A 6B, right? Or maybe even 2A delay throw. Or not that fast. Yeah, we want it like that, right? So a fuzzy input is something that is done during block stun. So during the 2A's block stun, right? Right. I hope this is random. Yeah. So look at the timing that I'm doing this, right? Oh well, I'm just reacting to it because I'm a scrub. It's hard for me to commit, right? So you can get hit during your up back just like that, right? But it's a specific timing, because ultimately, right? If you are fast enough, well, I'm kind of like checking the recordings, like looking at the recordings, but pretty much, right? Let's input the jump and go to down back. I'm a scrub. I'm a scrub. Don't listen to me. It's 3 in the morning. It's 3 in the morning. I'm way better off just like sitting here and reacting to it, because I'm not used to committing like this on defense. But the basic idea of the fuzzy guard is that it's like you block low and then block, or go to up back and then block low again, right? So it makes it so that something like that doesn't really contest with something like this. Alright, here we go. Is he on random? Okay. Yeah, just like this. Here we go. So what I'm doing here is I'm inputting the up back during the anticipated block stun of the second 2A, right? And that lets me jump out of his overhead attempt and jump out of his throw attempt, but I'm still able to block a delayed low. right? So that's kind of the idea, right? And it's not too important unless you can't deal with an offensive situation, but it gives you a very good way to tech throws and stuff like that. Because like this, right? I'm scared of the throw. Right? And he's staggering his pressure. Oh no. He's staggering his pressure. I'll do it a little later. Here. Right? So you can get hit on jump startup, of course, right? But the idea is just try to get out, right? Try to get out. And it's just a defensive input that will cover a couple of options, right? Won't cover everything, right? You can still get punished on jump startup like this. Yeah, just like that, right? You can get punished on jump startup, right? So you got to be careful with that kind of thing. But there's a much deeper video on it on LK's channel, Lord Knight, if you don't know him. But anyway, talking about how to use IB, how to use barrier, and just very lightly I'll talk about how to use dead angle afterwards, and then I'll kind of wrap up. But okay, so instant blocking, right? So system-wise, -3 frames of block stun. In the air, it's -6 frames of block stun, but there is extra block stun just by air guarding. So ultimately, it remains the same. So how do I make a string worse with instant block? Obviously, we talked about the special cancel options, right? So suddenly, okay, no, Ragnar, you're supposed to do the same thing every time. Right? So this is safe, right? This is a safe way for him to end his pressure. But if I'm able to instant block, suddenly it becomes unsafe, right? And, you know, it also makes it so that if he tries to extend his pressure, right? Say he wants to catch a fuzzy jump, just like I showed before, right? He's trying to catch the jump startup of it. Right, so let's say I get hit on jump startup here. Or at least that pressure there will keep me there even though I jumped, right? Which is pretty good for him anyway. So if I IB, suddenly my jump startup starts a little earlier and then I'm out of there, right? So he can't really be so cheeky, right? And sometimes he has to keep his pressure a little tighter, which also opens up the opportunity to IB barrier like that, right? So as soon as I IB barrier like that, right? Say he's doing a stagger into overhead, right? And I don't know if this will even hit me if I'm crouch blocking. My spacing is really bad with Ragnar. I haven't played him in a long time, but look. Right? So if I IB here, I can't jump out, right? But he's keeping his pressure tighter, right? I can't jump out because his pressure is tighter. But because his pressure is tighter, it also means that he's trying to keep me in block stun, right? And as soon as he's in block stun, I can IB barrier like that, right? And suddenly, don't whiff anything. Oh my god, I can't do combos. I'm so sorry. Anyway, yeah, that's a really good example of, like, you know, causing barrier to make things whiff, using barrier to cause things to whiff. You know, generally just building that distance, because even if he doesn't do the overhead, right? Look at that. Oh, wow, that... Even if he doesn't do the overhead, his Gatling options from that distance are very limited, right? And with the added bonus of IB, right? Suddenly, he has to try to time things for a different window, right? So realistically, how does he guess against this, right? He's like, you know, I'm going to do my pressure tighter to deal with IB into things. So then they can barrier it out. So I got to make my pressure tighter, and then they can IB barrier it, and then they build that distance. And suddenly, it's harder for me to maintain tighter pressure. On and on and on. But what did we do, right? We didn't do much, right? We didn't do much. We sat there. We sat there. Oh man, I hit back twice. That's tight, right? So ultimately, the big takeaway here is we could do all these things to their pressure, right? This is it. This is the theme of the video. We can cause all these things to happen during their pressure with very little commitment, right? Very little commitment. It's very hard to chase certain things. Very hard to tag jump start up when you make it variable in timing, right? Like, oh, you barrier, like how hard is it to punish barrier, right? Like how do you really punish barrier? Like they've got a lot of it. Use it right. Instant blocking is very hard to punish if you know how to use it right, which I'll talk about in the offense video, how to punish instant blocking and barrier and all that good stuff, right? But ultimately, these options are strong, right? They're strong and they're low commit. So using your low commit options to create this dynamic is the important part. You don't always want to mash during pressure, you know, just because you can do a lot of damage and maybe like get your turn, like you can't be so greedy for it, because ultimately, right, you make their pressure more manageable, you'll earn your turn back, and you know, you look cooler, right? You impress all the girls at your school. They're like, holy shit, I can't believe you could block that. It's just win-win-win, you know? So hopefully, you know, you take that idea. Generally, those concepts in terms of how to use instant blocking and how to use barrier, right, are pretty like intuitive, right? They're pretty intuitive in the sense that you could just apply them to a lot of scenarios during a lot of characters' pressure. You know, here I'll even show you my girl get bought by barrier, right? So let's do a block string, right? Let's do a pretty good block string. I can't decide what block string to do. What am I supposed to do? Alright, here we go. Right, so... oh yeah, this is it. Okay. So that is +5. 2C is +5. Right, 2C is +5 on the second hit, but if you barrier, it freaking whiffs! And if you IB that move, you can press button out of it, right? So it opens up responses, right? And just by doing that, just by displaying that, by instant blocking. Otherwise, I can't do much, right? I can't mash. So just by displaying that I can do that, she'll have to kind of reconsider going for that. And it's a strong mix-up, right? It's a strong mix-up scenario. And if I don't IB or barrier at all, I'm just stuck and everything sucks, right? So it's so important. It's so important. Because if I can get her to do this... oops. Let me do it this way. How do I want to do this? If I can get her to bait this out, right? I'm sorry. I'm dealing with my poor recording. If I can get her to bait that out, look, I have so much time. I have so much time. I could do whatever. Right? I'm free to go. I'm free to go. And being free to go like that, right? Imagine if she does the other thing. She does that, right? I'm out, baby. Look, like that option covers 2 responses from her. If she does the normal thing, or you know, she doesn't want to get hit mashing, or she's trying to call out your mash or whatever, suddenly a bunch of low risk options open up for you, and you know, it's good times. It's good times. It's good times. You see, I even got caught jumping there, but I didn't get hit on jump startup, right? It's all good. It's all good. She's pretty far. She can't really do the 2C pressure string, right? So there you go, right? There you go. You change the dynamic, make her overextend, and even if you're super cheeky, right? We're like, hell yeah, I know she can bait my shit out. Oh my god. I'm like so indecisive. Hell yeah, right? Suddenly she does something a lot more punishable. Wow, wow, wow. For 2.7k, no, you get a lot more than that. But, you know, you get the idea, right? Her secondary response, her response to me pressing a button and jabbing, pressing a button and jabbing, wow. I guess technically that's true, but instant blocking and jabbing, right? Her response to that is pretty decent, right? It's pretty safe, but I also have a pretty safe option to counter it, right? So the main thing is you want to err on the side of safety, right? Because you don't want to, hell yeah, I could mash anti-air here and kill you, because what she can do is, right? She could just frame trap you, right? So you gotta be a little careful, but you know, make your presence known, because once she starts doing that, you know, you get back to IB barrier and stuff, and there's the concept that we were talking about earlier. So that's kind of like the path, right? The path that things take in terms of development. And you know, that's kind of about it. It seems pretty simple, but the groundwork is where it goes places, right? And that's kind of where developed defense comes from. It just keeps going and keeps going and keeps going and keeps going until people figure out what are the best responses. You know, generally a lot of the best responses come with this wait and see mentality, right? You don't want to always guess. If you don't have to guess, it's a good thing, right? So, speaking of not guessing, right? This is kind of like the note I'll end the video on, just a little tidbit on how to dead angle, right? So, first off, there is a little OS that you could do to dead angle, right? Because you don't want to dead angle, and, you know, this looks pretty promising to dead angle, but what if she doesn't do anything? Right? You could throw, right? That's so cool. Right? Because you try to dead angle out. Or if you do forward AB, you'll get 6 AB, right? Right? And that's not good. You don't want that, because if she just does another move within the stagger window, you explode, right? You explode. Oh no, why did I try to dead angle? No, it's okay. It's okay. Don't worry about it, right? Because realistically, right, there are a couple option selects that will let you OS your input outside of dead angle, right? So in block stun, you'll get dead angle, and outside of block stun, you'll get this cool option selected move, right? So let me do it with Easy UI, because she's got a really nice one, or maybe Ragna. I'll do Ragna. Yeah, I'll do Ragna. He's got a pretty nice one, right? So for this guy, right? Look at my input. Look at my input. What do you think will happen if oh, I suck. So, getting hit low is like the danger of this, right? But right, if I'm in block zone, yeah, man. I'm sorry, it's 3 in the morning. I'm making this video to show you stuff. This is not me, okay? This is 3 a.m. me. But you get the idea, right? This you get out of block stun, and we're never getting a mistaken like 6B, right? We don't want Ragna 6B out of this. That is a monstrosity. Here, let's do this. Just make it easier on me. Hello? What am I doing wrong? Oh, I'm not going to 6th. My bad. Oh my goodness. Don't do that. There you go. It's pretty nice to do if you're actually doing it, right? Like that. I'm too used to doing like a billion other things. All right, I'm making mad excuses. Just trust me. Just trust me. Just trust me. Here, I'll do it. I'll do it for you. There you go. My brain. Anyway, so that's one way to attempt dead angles, right? And the nice little bonus that you get from doing that is if she tries to throw you, you'll tech it, right? I don't really got to show you that, but because you know I'll somehow screw it up right now, so I'm definitely gonna take a nap. So general timing that you want to dead angle, right? Boop boop boop, right? So it's a little scary to dead angle jabs, right? Because if you dead angle a jab, oh god, don't super jump. I wasn't ready. So she's safe, right? And that's totally not what you want, right? It's totally not what you want. So maybe she could do 2 jabs, right? And I'll hit her, right? But what's the guarantee here, right? It's still a little guessy. It's like 50-50. So, you know, what if I wait for her to go later in her string, right? So we'll do this. So, you know, maybe I'll... oh yeah, that worked for her to go later in the string. But again, you know, I kind of had to anticipate that, right? And you don't want to dead angle jump cancelable moves, right? So our kind of rule of thumb is wait for a Gatling, right? On a move that's not jump cancelable, right? And that way they have to really hard bait it, right? So let's say that moves... oh, whoops. Not jump cancelable, right? She can technically special cancel that, but if we do it early, right, not only do we get a counter hit, which, you know, for some characters it gives them more untech time on their dead angles and you get a better advantage, but, you know, she really had to guess there. Just kidding. That was off of 5C. Maybe I'll do a different string. There we go. The 2B, right? So as soon as I see this 2B, I know that she can't jump cancel it. She has to special cancel into something. And if she wants to hard bait it, yeah, she could. But, you know, it's a little more guaranteed, right? So what happens here if she doesn't do anything, right? What happens if she doesn't do anything? Oh, she still gets punished. Way better than the jab scenario where if she did nothing, right, she could punish you. But here, if she does nothing, she gets punished, right? And if she special cancels, unless she does DP, she gets punished. Or if she Gatlings into another move, she gets punished, right? So this is the spot, right? This is the spot. You block 2B, here, okay, cool. I'm gonna dead angle. And it's just about, you know, giving yourself as strong of a situation dead angling as possible, right? You don't want to get too predictable because what if she does like something crazy? What if she's like, you know what? I see you think you're nice, right? I see you think you're nice, and she does something like that. What's gonna happen here? You die. You're dead. You're extra dead. You lost 50 meter, and she just killed you, right? Not worth it. Not worth it. So you got to be a little tricky. But those are the kind of rules that you want to think about. Not jump cancelable point, stuff like that. Gatlings, you know. Anyway, that's kind of like, you know, a little bit of icing. It's not really too significant, but you know, just make the most of your dead angles. I don't like seeing people just dead angle and like on a jab. I punched them once and they just dead angle, and I'm like, what's wrong with you? You gotta wait for them to get later in their string. Right, and their options get restricted. Wow. So, you know, that's kind of about it. Kind of about it. My throat is so dry right now. I don't know how long I've been talking. I don't know how long it's been. But, yeah, I just want to highlight, again, you know, video in summary. Low risk. Options being used to weaken or force your opponent to give up their turn through passive or implicit threat. You gotta remember that, guys. Passive or implicit threat. You remember it? Cool. Alright. So, the safest way to establish those things is obviously through, you know, the lowest risk options you have, right? Because that means that you could constantly be like, I be bear, I be bear, I be bear, or whatever, right? And if you're wrong, and it's not a big deal, and you could keep trying, keep like making your presence known through those options. So pretty damn important. Bah! You know, I hope you understand. If you got any questions, you know, just leave it in the comments or whatever. I have been sold out. You know, I'm here for people now to just answer questions. My whole thing is that I don't know. I'm like a snappy teacher, you know. I'm like your tsundere teacher. That's what it is. So anyway, you know, I'm gonna wrap up. See you in the next video. Whatever. You know, my Twitch. This is my Twitch overlay because I'm too lazy. But yeah, you can find me on Twitch, twitch.tv/superkawaidesu, Twitter. See my schedules up there, whatever. I'm just gonna get out of your hair right now. Goodbye.